All right. Welcome everybody to wasmCloud Wednesday for August 31st. We actually have a new member joining the call today, and I'd love for them to introduce themselves. So Caroline, would you like to go?
Yeah, of course. Hello, everyone. It's really nice to meet you. My name is Caroline Tarber. I am a marketing communications consultant working with Liam and the team in a run-up to the launch of Cosmonic GA and to help generally kind of with positioning of the company as we start to grow. So yeah, it's really nice to meet you all, and anything I can be of assistance with, please shout.
All right. Thank you, Caroline, for doing an introduction. And now that we've done that, we have a very, very cool, very exciting demo today that's kind of building off of some things that Jordan showed last week. He went together and, well, I won't spoil the demo. Jordan, take it away.
Okie dokie. One sec. As it goes, my history does not have all the commands I need to say it for me. There it is. Okay. So yeah, I have that was me focusing. So yeah, I played with what I had been doing with the Go providers last week, where I had like the toy HTTP server example, and I wanted to really, I don't know, I wanted to do something more fun with it. So I don't know if you have or haven't heard of Litestream. It is more or less a tool that has made it so that like SQLite databases are slightly more production capable tools for us to use. It essentially monitors and streams your updates to your SQLite database locally to an S3 of some sort. So I think that's really cool. So essentially, I took the wasmCloud SQL DB contract, wrapped it around SQLite and the functionality needed for that. And what we got was a provider that will satisfy the SQL DB contract and stream the updates real time to an S3 bucket. I'm using just for this, I'm using the min.io, which is the S3, whatever, it works. So I've gone ahead and put the code up. I haven't done that with the HTTP server yet from last week, but a lot of the things that a lot of the hardships I ran into was really around like, once you understand kind of the flow of it all, right? A provider, you start a provider, it comes in and, it starts listening for link definitions. And as soon as it gets a link definition, it reads the stuff on the, that you put in the values. And then if it's validates, it starts the provider. And then we just sit here and we start listening for requests from our actor. And once you understand the flow, it actually gets pretty easy. This provider action is just a channel listening for things off the NATS, the appropriate NATS topic. And then we just start listening, sorting by the operations that satisfy that are defined by the wasmCloud contract. And I believe the SQL DB has an execute operation, a query operation, and a ping operation that is not currently implemented. Yeah, and the real difficult piece around all this was actually learning the encoding, right? The encoding, wasmCloud uses message pack and CBOR in some places. I don't really know what CBOR encoding is, but there was enough commenting in the code to help me figure it out. And while you won't see any of that in the provider directly, that's because I wrote a little wrapper library that does most of the encoding for me. So this is all pulling, doing all that for us. And it is straight out of the wasmCloud TinyGo message pack and wasmCloud TinyGo Seaboard. So there's nothing special. This code can be done directly in the provider. I just found myself copying and pasting it a lot, so I pulled it out. And now essentially what we have this toy actor, and all it does is listen for HTTP requests. If it's query, it does a select star statement that's hard coded into the actor. And if it is at /execute, it looks for the name query tag, and whoever the name is, it puts it in the database. So if we sit here and those are my 3 dogs. But if we went over here and said, this is my favorite, Brooks is my new friend, it doesn't say okay, but come back over here and now we have Brooks as our friend, and we can keep doing this. Liam's been nice to me, he can be my friend. And we have Liam. And the cool piece about this is now we get to, how do I change screens? So we get to, I'm in here, there's nothing in this directory, right? And we get to use the power of Litestream to restore out of our S3 bucket. And now if we do friends, we select star for friends, we have our database with Liam and Brooks in it. And all of that replication was done with the provider. And I just think this is really cool because now I can just give, Brooks or whomever a key to access this S3, and they have the database that they can use locally. Or I'm still learning Litestream. I know it's supposed to be able to allow us to do some really cool things with SQL to make it a production where, using locks or whatever, it makes it shareable. I don't know. I still have a lot of learning to do. But yeah, that's it. And it can be found here. It is not feature complete. It only works on text fields at this point, but I'm going to keep playing with it and make it more feature complete. And that's really it.
It's so cool to see additional implementations of these contracts, right? Also because it's implemented here for a service and as a Go capability provider. That's really awesome. But the cool part is, like, Jordan, I don't know if you wrote your actor before or after you started this. Did you start with this with like the Postgres provider and then implement Litestream, or did you write this all for this example?
No, I wrote this all for this example. That being said, I did have to turn on the Postgres. So a lot of my encoding troubles, right, was understanding how Seaboard was doing what and how message pack was doing what. So I did turn on the Pet Clinic and subscribe to the channel for the Postgres actor, and that's how I was actually using the Postgres provider to sanity check my SQLite messages, because over the wire they also see the same. So I did use it as a sanity check.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm happy to talk a little more about the encoding stuff, but I'll let anybody else ask questions and give praise and all that fun stuff.
No praise required.
Dang it, you mentioned something else in your demo that I wanted to ask about that I forgot. Oh, well, it's going to come to me in a second. Yeah, so the whole, the encoding mechanism with message pack and Seaboard, looking at what we should use, we consider just using JSON. We consider using something like, Cap'n Proto or something like that. Message pack was a great solution for something that was really efficient at encoding. Over time, as we were using it, and Steve is actually the resident expert here, and he would be able to give a little more of a detailed description, but CBOR has a more evolving spec. Message pack has been frozen not frozen in a bad way, but frozen in a way to preserve compatibility for years now. And CBOR also has the ability to do it's either numbered fields or custom attributes, or the specific term is escaping me, but that's why you see it for SQL and some of the annotations there. We don't actually use CBOR in many of our provider implementations, but SQL is one of them. So kudos for going down some custom encoding things.
I just checked. We don't have an ADR on an architectural decision record on why we ended up going the way we did, but I know there was extensive discussion. It may actually be logged over in maybe it was like the wasmBus. What was the old name of the repo, Brooks? wasmRPC.
Oh yeah. Like it might be in the wasmBus RPC or whatever that previously was, like the actual crate repo.
Yeah, I think that was where we maybe wrote down our reasons and the documentation. I think I only remember that because I think I wrote the documentation for it, but I'll look for it, Jordan. If I can find it, I'll drop it in the channel because it was an interesting read through. I interviewed Steve and Phil Keedy and a few of the guys that were involved in that decision to take those notes. If I find it, I'll put it up on Slack for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Jordan, can you talk about any other gotchas that you found when, I know that you were kind of home rolling your own provider SDK for Go, because that's not something that we had support for. Can you talk about what you've been able to separate into that provider SDK and like how much work it took to write the provider minus the encoding?
Yeah. So really the pieces that I moved out are kind of like the life cycle pieces, right? We know that we all, at some point we start, and the first thing we have to listen for are some sort of link definitions, right? So and a lot of this I did with Go channels, right? The provider sending things to the SDK over created channels, and the SDK is doing all the NAT stuff. But it was pretty straightforward once I kind of understood the life cycle, right? Start, wait for link, get a link, validate the configuration that rides the link. If the link is good, start the actor and listen very specifically for the certain messages defined by the contract. And then once I understood that, honestly, the provider itself minus business logic is only like 4782. It's only like with some white space. It's like 30 lines of code, and most of it is Go's giant error checking blocks. So it actually got became pretty straightforward. And the only thing this provider doesn't do yet is handle multiple connections from multiple actors, which is what I'm going to do next. Try and figure that piece out. But yeah, no, it was really understanding the life cycle, figure out the encoding, and everything else is pretty straightforward.
That's awesome. I mean, I hope that it's open source anyways, so I hope you'd be fine putting that provider SDK out there and letting us experiment with it and the community experiment with it. And would you be would you be interested in taking this Litestream provider once you've had a chance to work on it and polish it up to whatever standard you'd like to, and getting it PR'd as like a community provider into our capability providers repo? I mean, this would be
So
a
we can
sweet
definitely
alternative.
do it with the the SQLite capabilities. The funny thing about Litestream is it wasn't released as a as a module, right? So I'm not importing Litestream. What I had to do was pretty much go take chunks of their code and move it into the repo with it, and I call it directly. But if we can get them to just expose, like, I think I used 2 functions, then yeah, this can be like a full Litestream thing that we can do, that can have a life cycle. I would just want to talk to the Litestream people and understand why they didn't, why they're not like exposing the start Litestream function essentially publicly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And even if it's something that you have to run the Litestream database or like run a Minio thing, anything you can do locally, I mean, that's fine. Does Litestream actually, is it its own service, or can you do like an in-memory SQLite kind of thing?
It's a command line tool as it sits right now. The only reason it's working with the providers, because more or less they have the replicate function is a long running service that you can, typically the documentation is like do system D or something like that. I just took that function and stuck it in the provider, and that's what we're calling. So the provider is the parent of it. But after that, so I am interested in experimenting if I can do an in-memory database, like go to S3, pull, replicate it down into memory and that type of stuff, because I know SQLite can do that, but I don't know that I can point Litestream at an in-memory database yet. I haven't gotten that far.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just really interested in that. I know when I think of some of our examples that we have, there are still some that are just easier to run using Docker or Docker Compose, which is fine, right? Like with the pet clinic example, we're running everything, including the UI, with wasmCloud, but you can't, like, there's no in-memory Postgres database. So we launched the Postgres database as a container. I would love to start identifying some of those places and removing Docker as a necessity, not removing the support for it, just removing the need to install Docker to run some of our more popular demonstrations, if that makes sense.
We can definitely do that with SQLite because it is just reading a file off disk. That's the whole database, which would be cool. So, I mean, we can make this, even if Litestream isn't a feature, but we make it a full-fledged SQLite provider.
Well, then, so somebody could, if we had a SQLite provider and a Litestream provider, there's any, number of things, but you could develop locally, just like with a file on disk as your database. And then whenever you move to production or like your real running environment, you swap it out with the Litestream provider, and you have, I don't know if that provides more resiliency or a better experience, but your actor code doesn't need to change.
Yeah.
Very cool stuff. Does anyone else have any other questions for Jordan? Cool. Well, thank you, Jordan. That was really cool. And I am looking forward to, now that you have some Go tools, I feel like you're just like running buck wild. Like now you have the language of your choice and you can do what you want.
Yeah. I'm gonna start knocking these out. I'm gonna try and get the HTTP server one formalized using my little SDK. I'm gonna try and do the client. I'm gonna try and get a few out because why not?
Yeah, awesome. Well, let us know. You always got a demo slot. Okay, I figure now at the end of demo section, it's good to ask. Matt, do you have anything else that you wanted to show for Wash Build? I know that you put in a PR and that's kind of actively in review, and I can talk about a couple things with like how the merging strategy there. But is there anything else that you wanted to show?
Not really on terms of demos. We could talk about the kind of makefile command stuff if it just get people's opinions on that.
Yeah, that's a great great call. Let me pull that up real quick.
Sounds good.
Look at that, I can share my screen. Okay. Yeah, Matt, if you wanted to narrate this, go ahead.
Sure. So basically the purpose of this issue, kind of RFC, is that at least my personal goal, and I think a goal of a number of other people on the project, is to remove makefiles from being such a important part of the wash process at the moment. This carries a number of benefits. Some of them are listed on here. So we want to delete the makefiles entirely, which carries a number of benefits, including portability, just pure simplicity for developers, and a more kind of polished feel to using Wash and using the wasmCloud ecosystem in general. And simultaneously with some of these commands, we want to try and make the simple case of developing wasmCloud applications to be easier. Right now, there's, as many of you guys who use Wash probably know, there's a lot of commands that require multiple different like words. So you'd have like wash, reg, and like the multiple different subcommands. So we're trying to reduce the number of times you need to use those, just to make it easier for people to learn these commands, because it's easy to use them. If you know other tools you've used, for example, in Node, like yarn or npm, often it's just, you know, yarn install or npm install and stuff like that. So we want to try and make these commands as short as possible. So that's what a number of these commands are. They're actually coming from makefile already have, and just kind of translating these into wash commands. So they're kind of directly in there. This makes it easier for users, as well as it also makes it easier for us as project maintainers, especially when we add more languages, because having a makefile that is split between multiple languages is quickly going to get kind of messy. So this will make it easier to implement for each language that we want to support. If you take a look at some of these commands, I probably won't walk through all of them. If you want to take a look through them in your free time, go ahead. Some of the important ones are kind of wash test. So automatically running the tests for each language. And yeah, there's just a lot of simpler commands here to get some of the often used stuff for, especially for active developers. Yeah, that's mostly it for this. If people want to take a look and let me know what you think. If you have any comments, I know Brooks has a bunch of comments from earlier that he made, and I responded to those. So we're kind of in a dialogue right now. So if people want to take a look, go ahead. And then Brooks, if you have anything else you want to add.
Yeah, I've just overall big support for the proposal. In addition to makefiles requiring make on Mac, we actually have this in our documentation. The version of make that comes pre-installed is actually not like the newest version that like comes on a lot of Linux systems. So like depending on parsing, like you may need to brew install make on Macs anyways. It's a pain on Windows. As a part of our makefile, some of our scripts also include things like JQ for parsing JSON output. And, you know, if we kind of bring this all into Wash, then we get to parse the output. So it removes a lot of, I think we actually have that. I was going to talk about something else for our install, but you know, you see we have this section on Unix utilities like bash, git, jq, make. Removing that whole section, you see there's the new make, GNU, whatever. removing this whole section, takes off like a quarter of the page. It'd be real nice to kind of build it all into Wash. So big support. The only comments that I really had, it was just brainstorming on how we can best organize the subcommands here, because we have a good opportunity. Like, love wash start, like the need to be able to say control start and then the actor or provider. I'd love to just be able to say wash start and then give it the thing to start. So big fan of the proposal. Just really only is about like the details of how we want to structure the subcommands, and wash build is certainly the first and maybe most important step of this.
Yeah, for sure. I'd also mention that a lot of these commands will be leveraging the wasmCloud.toml file that we've been working on. So all those kind of parameters that are in brackets there will be stuff that is either gotten dynamically from either requesting a host or is just pulled straight out of the config file. So we kind of infer those parameters for you just to make it easier to use Wash and learn the wasmCloud ecosystem. But yeah. If people have other commands or they don't like these commands, feel free to comment and let us know.
One thing that we've kind of talked about that's maybe hot contention, I actually don't really have a preference. I don't know what the majority of things are, is if you should do, your CLI and then the verb and then the noun, or your binary and then the noun and the verb. Like if you inspect claims or claims inspect. And I think what Wash has now is, and I think Connor, maybe you've pointed out a couple inconsistencies, but largely the noun and then the verb. Right. So we have like wash control, or I guess we have start actor. It goes kind of back and forth there, but it'd be interesting, if we make some of these changes, if we do want to reconsider the like changing the order of our commands. So we'll have to, maybe it would be useful if we lay this out all in like a table or something and try to see how we can structure the commands. That'd probably be useful. And we're gonna publish a breaking change for all of this, but whatever is most ergonomic and what most tools use, and we can best like categorize commands will probably be the better thing to go with. So I like the more I'm talking, I like the table idea to kind of lay out all the commands together.
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe we can make another markdown file just with kind of the existing commands, and then we can keep that updated. But yeah, I think personally, I believe that like wash verb is the best way. If we then need to do wash verb noun for some things, that works too. But I think that wash noun verb kind of makes people think like Yoda style a little bit backwards and confuses people. So I don't know, maybe we could put this to a vote. I don't know how people feel. But I do think that having the verb first makes sense to me.
Yeah, that's a good point, Justin. I don't know if you're in a place to talk, you can say it, or I can say it. I like that last thing that you said, which is just like speaking the command out loud can be useful too, to think of like what people's brains will be thinking. Like saying wash start actor makes more sense to me than saying wash actor start. I like the Yoda comparison, but that would be, maybe we can take a step back and think of the things that we want Wash to be able to do, and then we can organize that into the commands that we would want Wash to support. We could do everything with a top level command. The only I did drop this concern, I think, that I would just not want to run wash like -- help and then get like a whole man page of commands. So, but I'm sure we'll be able to organize that.
It's my favorite part of the NAT CLI.
Cool. Well, I dropped this issue in the chat. This is in the wash repo now, issue 299. So anybody feel free to drop comments. I'm sure after today's discussion, probably there's going to be a good bit of iterating on this one. So sounds like it'll be fun. I had a couple things that I wanted to share, just general wasmCloud things. But that should be pretty quick. This is actually a deploy. Well, you can see this is actually a preview of documentation. I put in a draft PR, including the release change log for the new 0.57. That has a couple like little bug fixes. This is really a high level view of the fixes, and in the Git repo we include the smaller things, which thanks to Rovast and maybe it was the last one, yeah, Taction. These folks have been submitting a couple PRs for the wasmCloud dashboard, which has been awesome. Like just little fixes for errors that would pop up in the console. Someone came in today and put in a PR to let you close modals with the escape key, which is super nice. So thank you all for that. But what I really wanted to point out here on the call is that with release 0.57, we changed the way that we create wasmCloud releases. And the way that this was done previously is with a library called Distillery. And a couple of years ago, this was the de facto way to create application releases with Elixir apps. And this was great. It had a ton of features that the built-in releases didn't have at the time, including things like executable releases, and being able to start applications and things like that. But it's actually, we noticed the other day that it hasn't really been updated since 2020, February 17th of 2020. So over 2 years ago, which isn't necessarily a problem. But we did see when building our project, let me see if I can find, I guess this was me iterating, but the build started to fail when creating releases. And we were wondering why, and turns out Distillery, I can actually find the issue, is not compatible with OTP 25, which is the latest release of OTP. And you know, we didn't have a huge level of confidence that Distillery would continue to update with new versions of the standard library. And actually, mix releases, which is the way Mix is the kind of cargo equivalent for Elixir. Mix releases are a way, they've grown a lot in the last couple of years to kind of eclipse Distillery. So knew this had to happen at some point, but with builds and the CI failing, it was finally time to switch to mix releases. And for all intents and purposes, that this keeps everything pretty similar. There's not much that's going to change. If you're using wash up, which will kind of be the de facto way to run wasmCloud hosts, unless you're kind of doing a custom CI thing, you'll never know that this change was actually made. But I did want to point a couple of differences out, which are documented on the website and in GitHub, but I'll show you kind of live. So one thing to point out is that switching from Distillery releases to mix releases did drop our binary or our release size a significant amount, which is pretty sweet. We'll always take that. So what you all are likely used to is when you run bin wasmCloud host, you get this this blob of help text. So you can do things like starting in the background as a daemon, start in the foreground with logs or with an IEX console, things like that. Now the prompt you're going to get is a little different. So the actual structure of the project is the same, the bin, Erlang runtime system and everything. But the commands have changed. They're a little simpler, but notably they change in name. So wasmCloud hosts start with distillery, starts it in the background. With mix releases, it actually starts it in the foreground. So this brings up the, this attaches the logs and displays them to you. If you're looking for the old functionality of starting the host in the background, kind of as a daemon, it's aptly named daemon now. And doing that will output your logs to temp log Erlang log 1. So it's kind of the same as before, just temp log instead of var log, and you can see your logs there. So I wanted to point this out. If you're using a wasmCloud release newer or equal to than whatever version 57, you'll have to use start to start in the foreground and daemon to start it in the background. This probably won't affect much if you're using the Docker image. We take care of the start command for you anyways. But one notable decision that we made out of this is that washlib as a version 0.2, whatever, will enforce a minimum version of version 57. And this is mostly because washlib is very new. It implements functionality for starting wasmCloud hosts. And since there's no plan to ever go back on distillery releases, at least for now, there's really not too much sense in maintaining two different code paths for starting two different types of releases. Additionally, washlib or the wash CLI will always have a pinned wasmCloud version. So when you download wash, it's going to start that version of wasmCloud. You can override it, but the default use, which is going to be start a version of the host that's pre-compiled in, I would argue is like the 95% case, won't ever know that this is happening. So I put this in the wasmCloud Slack just to see if anybody was violently opposed. Does anybody think that anybody else think this is a bad idea and that we should support free 0.56? Of course, they would still run. This would only be in the wash up library. Wash start library. Cool. Then yeah, with Slack and this call having silence is acceptance, I think that this is fine. I think that there's no need to support really old versions. And every new version of the host that comes out is such a massive improvement at this point. It might as well rip the Band-Aid off now, and we can just continue to get better going forward. Guess that's all. That'll be extensively documented in the washlib release, and I don't think I have the right version of wash that I'm working on this installed locally or anything, but if you tried to start a version of the host that's like 0.55, it gives you a nice, it errors out with a nice message saying that version 55 is earlier than the earliest supported version, which is 57. Cool. Let's see. That's all I have for now. I don't think that the schedule for Cloud Native WASM Day is public yet. As soon as it is, we will be. Is it public? Oh man.
Yeah, look over in chat. It just went live in the last couple of minutes. I still have got to get two talks updated, but one is a panel that we're going to have with a venture capitalist, a media Representative Alex Williams, the founder of the New Stack, and then Renee Shaw from Amplify. And then the other one is the SIG registry talk that Taylor Thomas from Cosmonic is going to be giving. He, I think, needs to update a few notes in his description.
Okay, cool. Well, this looks pretty sweet. Luke Wagner from Fastly, Kate Goldenring from Microsoft. We have the folks from Fermion who gave the CMS talk at the last WASM Day doing, it looks like they're doing the keynote, and then another one from the Docker folks. That's pretty cool.
Yep. Docker has 2 talks. They're launching some native WebAssembly support. But I think this talk at 9:50 is probably one of the more exciting ones of the day. That's JVM support for WASI, which is kind of one of the white whales from a language perspective. So I've been following that work in TVM for a little while. And that's all out in the public, the pull requests, but that one is super exciting. And then we've got this Python talk. So we not only have Java, we also have Python with an update. They're moving, I don't know if they've announced it yet, but I think they're planning on moving to making WASI a tier 2 language, which means it's more officially supported in Python. And then another Docker talk. And then we've got, we have this guy, Brooks Townsend, speaking. I don't know if anybody's heard of that guy.
Who's that guy?
Another .NET talk. So 3 different languages, and we got Carl back from Single Store, and the Taylor and a few other folks who are doing SIG registries, and then C# and WASM interface types. Yet another language talk. So we've got 3 big languages coming down. So there'd be a lot there.
Apache WASM components from, oh yeah, Taylor has 2 talks that he's doing on WASM Day. Very cool.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. And then Connor from Suborbital will be there. I know he was the Suborbital folks were a notable missing party at the Europe one. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, cool. This, I'll send this in chat, but it's pretty easy to find if y'all are looking for, the schedules, like Cloud Native WASM Day, NA for 2022. It's a great. Justin makes a good point in the chat that all the language talks represent a good opportunity to network and to get developers interested. Just very true. Whether or not the whole Java thing is using part TVM or Python is becoming like a V2 or whatever. Any advancement in languages compiling to WASM brings on a whole nother group of people. It's really exciting. This is gonna be a fun one.
It's gonna be good.
Sweet. Well, I was pretty sad that wasn't public yet, and then here we are. Very cool. Well, I didn't have anything else that I wanted to talk about today necessarily. I think it's a good time for open floor. Does anyone else have anything that they wanted to talk about from the wasmCloud community, stuff happening in wasmCloud, or just the general WebAssembly community? All right, well, pretty sweet community meeting. Thanks everybody for coming. I'll stop the recording and we can just hang out.